Go ahead.
Yeah, welcome everyone to this session. Um, Configurable data table in LWC, and we're going to see dynamic epics. How can we use this? Before we start, a little bit about me. So I'm a Salesforce enthusiast on Salesforce platform for around 5 years now. Got a chance speaking at some events in India, at India Dreamin' and Hyderabad Trailblazing. Apart from Salesforce, I'm passionate about poetry, movies, and yeah, because of the lockdown recently, cooking. If you're on uh, Twitter, you can follow me at Umang SFDC. Yeah, before we proceed with our presentation, there is a forward-looking statement. So this is a standard Salesforce forward-looking statement that we all are aware of. Okay, let's understand what we are trying to achieve here and how this whole design and whole solution came up. So for one of the client, we were having the requirement where the data was coming from different objects. It had different logic, and the standard report was not sufficient. And we had to go to the route of custom reports. And even with the custom reports, what functionalities they wanted is they wanted to add and remove the fields using configuration. So it should be so admin should be able to add fields to that report or remove some fields from that report. They should be able to change the ordering and a lot of this stuff. So it was not just a static report, but a very generic configurable report. And actually, we achieved it using data table and dynamic epics. So we're going to see how this whole solution is going to work, and we'll have the example of how this data table is working. So before we go ahead with the data tables, let us understand what is dynamic apex and what are the tools that we have used in this particular solution. So, so the first tool that we have used from the dynamic apex. So dynamic apex is a huge. There are a lot of tools, or there are a lot of classes, methods, um, APIs you would be able to use to dynamically achieve your solutions. The tools that we have used is the first one, which is a dynamic SQL, where we are creating the query and executing it dynamically using database.query. We all must be aware about it. So database.query simply takes a query string, executes it, and return you the result. So if there are only one record, you can capture it in single as object. If multiple records are being written, you can use list of as objects. Now, another thing which is very important of this solution, that is generic as object class. So there is a class from Salesforce, and that is as object, and there are some useful methods of this particular class, and this is the base class for all our as objects. So for example, if it is opportunity or account that we are using in our apex, they are all extended from as object class. So the base class is as object. So those methods that we have on the base class, we would be able to use. So so there are two methods which we have used. One is get method, uh, and if we provide the field name in this particular get method, and this is in a string, we would be able to get the actual value. So this is a bit different approach. So generally what we do is we query, let's say we query the account, and from account we simply type down account dot field name, because we already know what the field name is. But now let's say we are trying to get the dynamic fields, and the fields are stored in some configuration variable, and from there you like from the string you would like to access the value of that particular record. So let's say here we have account. The account is created and the name is Acme and description is Acme account. Now from this particular account, what I can do is I can use get method and pass on the description as a text and get the description value. So this would help us dynamically get the values using strings. So this is a very important method. Another method is get as object, and we are passing here the field name. So basically what we are using this for is, let's say we have related objects. So let's say account have its parent, let's say parent account record, and we want to uh, dynamically we want to move to its parent account and we want to get the values from parent account. So in that case, first of all, using get as object, we would move to its parent account, and then from there we are going to um, get the fields using get field name. So we'll see the example and we'll see the code, how this both works and how uh, this is getting us the dynamic values. Okay, how does data table look in LWC? So if you have not seen how the data table is created in LWC, it's pretty simple. We have data table HTML file. In the template, we have a lightning data table component. We pass there are three required parameters. First one is what is your key field, or this is like to identify your rows uniquely, what is your key field. Then what is the data, uh, data of your data table. I mean, this is all rows and columns. So this is all columns. How do we pass the data? What is the structure? So data is something like this and columns is something like this. So for the columns, we have uh, like array of objects, and in the object we have two things. One is label, another one is field name. So field name is the name with which your data is going to map to. So this name and this name gets matched, and on this particular column name, this particular value name gets shown. Similarly for phone, we have a different column here, uh, and data is passed like this. So the structure is like we are passing it as a JSON object and arrays of JSON object. So this is what we would try to create using Apex, but this is the whole structure is going to be dynamic. We should be able to create it using some of our configurations that we have set up. Okay. So now what we are trying to do is we are trying to create a generic data table. Here what you see is you have fixed label and the data fixed label, and based on that you get the object data and your columns. But what we are trying to do here is we are trying to have the generic data table which is flexible to add more columns using configuration, and based on that, I mean, you can use any other object and things like that. So what this solution has is it supports all the object. So you don't need separate component for, or the separate data table for each of the object. You can have all the objects in parallel. So it supports all the object. From any of the object, you can get that data and show it on the data table. You can add, remove, and order your columns. So all this using configuration. So you can configure it, and based on that, your data table would reflect it. You can have some filters. So if you're using a component and this is a generic component, and you have a particular query, or you're trying to get some data, but you want to filter it, you would be able to do that. And if you want to order it by name, by name, number, or any other field, you would be able to order it. And this all would happen using configuration. Okay, now let's see how we have set it up. So actually, we have created a data table object setting. So you need to decide where your configuration can go. So either it can go to your custom metadata, it can go to your custom settings, or you can also have objects. Why we chose objects here is because we have an hierarchical relationship between objects and fields and a lot of other settings that we were trying to actually manage. Here, it's a smaller version of that particular solution. So, what goes in the data table object settings? So this is the detail section of that particular object. So you see, there is an object API. So this is the object API name from this particular object. We are going to make the query and we are going to execute it. And we have another object which has a lookup relationship with data table object settings, and it has all the columns configuration. So let's see how the column configuration looks. So we have column label. So column label is nothing but what we are going to see at. So this is one of the data table that I've put on. So this is the column label which we are going to show. So what is field name? Field name is again we saw it is to map your column with your data. So when you have the parent objects, you can't have on opportunity if you have account name. So simply in your field name you can use something like this, um, account name. So this is going to be your field name, and this is what is going to be mapped with your column name and column data. So that's how you can avoid all this underscore r and all the huge naming convention that we are following. So the field name is for them. That column API simply um, gives the API name of that particular column. So let's say if it is amount field that we are trying to create, the field name would be amount, column API would be amount, and parent object API, if we are trying to access this particular field from parent object, we are going to provide uh, the API name of parent here. So let's say if this is coming from account, so I would say account and accounts parent account, then account dot parent account, something like this. So any like up to 5 levels you can provide here, because that's what your query supports. So up to levels you can add your parent objects here. uh, the solution would then look this particular information in your parent account. Okay, so this is how parent fields gets accessed. Then we have the type, like which type of field this is. uh, on data table. So on data table, you can define it as text, number, currency, or date. So we can define the type and all, and then we can have order. So what is the ordering of that particular um, field? So if you see here, let me add amount as currency and order is 4. Let's move to here. You see the amount column has been added, and uh, the new the new column got added on this particular dynamic data table without changing any code. Okay, so let's see how the uh, how in the backend this is all set up and how this is working from backend. So let's move to the HTML part. So you can ignore the other part. It is all there. It is all there. So this part is for showing the spinner. This part is uh, for pagination and all. But the main part is we have the lightning data table where we are passing data columns and we are just hiding the checkbox in on each row. So it's just simple, this particular data table on HTML side. On JavaScript side, you can ignore the other things. they are all for like pagination and all. It's we are defining some of the variables here like data, columns, and then items. So items contains all the records, and data is a slice of it. So like the paginated data that we have. Um, so from JavaScript, what we are doing from the lifecycle hook connected callback, this gets called whenever whenever the LWC is loaded. So this is like an init method. So what we are trying to do here, we are showing the spinner. We are setting a particular link. It is a just data table setting links that we'll see. And then we are calling a method which is show data table. What does show data table does is it calls a get table details method from Apex. So if you see here, we have imported get table details from the Apex controller, data table controller. So it simply calls a particular method by passing some of the settings. One is data table setting ID. So what is the data table setting here? So if you see, how do we define which setting to use? So how does this particular record and this particular component gets mapped? So if I go here and edit the page, so you can see here, I've provided some of the parameters here. So that is data table setting ID, which is of this particular record. So that's how it gets mapped, and it passed to Apex. So Apex gets to know from where all the data should come in. Okay, and like where is the configuration residing. And we have some filters, parameters, and sort by parameters here that we'll see. So all these parameters that we have over here that we have set it up, we would be passing it to Apex, and we would be executing this get table details method. Okay, once we get that particular result, we have a few things to do, like we are populating data variable, columns variable, uh, and other stuff. So basically, from front end side, we are not doing much work. It's all the dynamic thing that we are doing is from the backend. So let's see how that is being handled. So once get table details is being called, um, from LWC, it gets to Apex. We have got data table setting ID, filter string, and the short string. So here the solution is layered. So we have a particular wrapper class which is being written to LWC. So how does this wrapper look? The wrapper has nothing but columns and data. So this is what LWC is expecting, right? So all the columns and all the data, that is what we are going to populate, and that is what this the instance of this particular data table wrap we are going to return from this particular method. And from its constructor, we are going to call some of the helper methods, which is where we are having all the dynamic logic. So the first method that we are uh, going to call is get settings. Now, when if I move to data table helper class, focus on this particular method, get settings. What does get settings does is it queries all the fields from data table object settings. So we were passing data table setting ID from here. So basically, the data about this particular object and its columns, it is being queried over here, and it is setting up the other strings, like which is helpful for creating our query, which is query filter string and query short string. So both the strings we are we are just populating it and having it in the static variables, so that we are going to use it in the other methods. So from the first method, what we did, we just set up the settings. Okay, so this is the setup that we are going to have, and we just queried it. So all the configuration we have using get setting method. Now the next method which is getting called is get columns. What this does is it creates a JSON array of the columns with the structure that we wanted for our data table. Okay, so for that we cannot have a wrapper class, and we cannot serialize it, because all this all this uh, fields, all these objects and everything is dynamic. So we need to create the JSON by ourselves. So there is a JSON generator class which you can use it to create a JSON. So let's have a instance of JSON create generator, and we have a instance of JSON generator. um, on this particular generator, there are multiple methods which you can use. So first one is write start array. What this would do, it would simply add an array start. So it's something like this. It would simply add an array start. Now we are looping through all our data columns setting that we queried. So from our data table object settings. So from our data table setting, we got all our data table column settings, and on each column we are looping through it, and we are creating the JSON in the same format that we require for data table. So at the end, we are going to have a JSON like this with the array. So all the columns that we are going to have is going to be created, and we would be able to pass this particular columns name to LWC. Now the next thing which is getting called, and which is very important, is get data. Now in the get data, we are first of all making the query. So I've got a separate method for get query. What this does is dynamically create the query. How does it dynamically create it? So I've got some of the prefix already there, like select ID, and then we are looping through all the columns and getting the column API names. If it has parent object API populated, we are getting that parent object and adding the column API name here. And once the query is ready, you would be able to execute it. So using database.query, this is a dynamic Apex tool that we are using database.query. We are querying out all the objects. Now again, we are going to create the JSON from here. And for creating the JSON, we have got the JSON generator. We started with the write start array. Similarly, we are going through all the columns. But here there is something that we need to take care. So once our query gets executed, so let's say it is the query on opportunity, and the field is account dot name. Okay, so in that case, your target object is going to be from the parent object. So you simply can't use as object dot get field name. So in that case, first of all, you need to move to the parent object, and then you can use as object dot get method to get that particular value. So what I'm trying to do here is, first of all, I'm setting up the target to my data, so or to my as object. So let's say if this is opportunity, first of all, it is the target is opportunity, or the as object is opportunity. Then we'll check if we have the parent object API for the column. What we would do, we would split that particular API name using dot, and we would have all its parents, and we would try to move uh, to the highest parent. So what I did here, we split those parents. From parents, how can we get the parents? So from target, we can get as, we can use get as object, and the string that we are trying to access. So here in this case, it's going to be account. So now my target is account. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use target.get. So first of all, I'm checking if I'm having the target already, and if I have the value from that particular column name from the target, I would be setting up target.get and the column name. Otherwise, it would be blank. Okay, so this is how the data is getting structured in the JSON using JSON generator, and it is being passed to LWC, and it is being shown here on the home page layout. Now, if I add some filters over here, let's say I would be able to add some filters over here, and that would be applied to uh, this particular component. So let's add a filter over here. Short by we already have. Now let's set up another component. So the same component, this is a configurable data table component. Now let's say I want to have the data table for account object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop the same component over here. Now the data table setting ID is going to be of the account configuration. So I've already created an account configuration here. So from account configuration, I'm passing it on here. And if I apply the account configuration ID here and save it, it would get the data from account object. So as you can see it here. So now there is no dependency on your object. The same data table can get any columns from even from parents. You can filter your data. You can sort your data for any object. This is going to be working. One crazy thing which I did with this is I added platform event over here. So if you see, like right now you're seeing 4 columns over here. Whenever anything happens on this particular object, uh, which is data table column settings. So let's say if I delete it from here, it's going to be automatically reflected here. So you do not need to even reload it. You would be able to see everything live here without changing any code. All flexibility you would be getting. And uh, yeah, this is the overall solution uh, that we have for generic data table. So overall, we have a configuration which is residing in objects. Then we are using some dynamic apex to handle all the dynamic nature of the solution. And then once we process the data, we transform the data. We are showing it on the LWC. So that's the overall solution which I wanted to show you. Do you have any questions on this?
Hey, Umang, I have a question. You're actually returning the data from Apex, right?
Correct.
Into items.
Correct.
Okay, why wouldn't we actually, return using page size directly from Apex rather than getting all the data? I mean, if you had like a large number of records,
Mhm.
performance-wise, the first load will be like very high, right?
Correct. So it depends. It depends. So yeah, so here the implementation is client side pagination. But yeah, you can use your pagination tactics to have lazy loading or to have all the other things. But the solution would work as it is. So it's just change in your pagination technique.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So what we had to do is we had to export the data. So let's say if it is more than, so what our solution was doing, like if it is more than 1,000 records, we had to export it. And for that also we had to do some really generic stuffs. So like it's a whole lot of generic solution that we developed on.
Okay. Yeah, my suggestion was to, like, not even have the items directly in data. You add an additional parameter with your page size,
Uh-huh.
and send it across to Apex. So it will return only that
Correct.
many records, right? And if
Correct.
you
Yeah.
want more data, you can
Yeah. Yeah.
request for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is the like um, server side pagination that we're
Right.
talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Because
we
if
can.
you have, like, like, let's say the like, for large data, like, records, like opportunities and all, they might have 1 million records, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. So if your data table is going to retrieve everything at first and then do the pagination on the
Correct.
front, it will be like
So
pretty
yeah, yeah,
long.
yeah. We can absolutely have either lazy loading, or we can have all the pagination technique that we have. We
Sure.
can easily like incorporate.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions, team? Okay, I don't see anything in the chat. Nobody has
Thank
unmuted as well.
thank
So,
you, everyone.
right, thank you, Monk.
Thank you.